Coming up on the next edition of Power and Politics, the fallout from President Biden's dismal debate performance continues to rock the 2024 presidential contest. And why is Governor Ron DeSantis' Republican convention scheduled this coming week, minus any high-profile appearances? Hello and welcome to another edition of Power and Politics. I'm your host, Frank Cipolla. Power and Politics is a weekly unbiased look at the top stories affecting the state with a special emphasis on the psychology behind the decisions and issues that affect our lives. I am joined today by my co-host, Emmy Award-winning political psychologist, Dr. Bart Rossi. Doctor, welcome.
Great to be here again, Frank.
Well, it's been almost 3 weeks since the first presidential debate of this election cycle, and President Biden is still trying to manage the fallout from his performance. And Doctor, as a psychologist, you have worked with people suffering from cognitive issues. What did you see?
Well, Frank, my expertise, as you know, is Alzheimer's and the 7 stages of the disease process. And I don't think this is Alzheimer's, but what we're seeing is cognitive decline and cognitive issues. And a lot of times with older people, a couple of things can happen. They can be very sharp for a long period of time, well into their 80s and 90s. We see performers in their 90s doing very well. But also, there can be cognitive issues that develop quickly. It could be from a month, 2 months ago, where someone looked good, but now maybe just a few months later, they're not quite that good. And a lot of times cognitive issues are seen by people, and you can see the slippage, and this is what we've seen now in that debate. Biden has some cognitive problems. I mean, it's obvious.
You're certain of that?
Yeah, I mean,
because you're diagnosing him from afar.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that he's incompetent or, let's say, not competent, but there are issues there which bring in concerns, okay? And then the other thing that I'd like to say from the clinical end is that a lot of times we see denial. And with Biden, I think he's denying the fact that it's there. And that's normal. I mean, that happens. But a lot of times this denial continues and people think that they can do better than they really can do. And that's a problem. And he's denying that what he should do, really, and make a decision.
All right, let's talk about the optics of it, because people are busy, but they're also interested. But, you know, they're taking the kids to school. They're taking care of household chores. They're going to work and so on. You see a Donald Trump in this debate who's 78 and, quite frankly, looks 68. And you have a President Biden who's 81 and, quite frankly, looked like he was 91. Optically, that does not look good for a president who has another 4 years should he be reelected. Talk about the optics of it and the psychology of the folks watching this.
Well, you use the word correctly, optics. It's all about the optics, because I saw a number of people, expert debate and analysts, okay? And they gave both of the candidates Fs. You know, they gave Trump an F because every other sentence was a fabrication. I mean, fabrications that were beyond the big lie thing about, you know, giving Nancy Pelosi 10,000 troops that she could command, and she should have done something on January 6th. I mean, that's just absurd. And so, but to your point, one looked sharper and more with it, and that was Donald Trump, the former president. And no matter what he said, he looked better and sharper.
That is interesting. Now, if you turn the volume down on that debate, if you were so inclined, you could see that visually, and I think a lot of people were just concentrating on the visual aspect of it. As a voter, 4 months till Election Day, should I be, you know, what's the psychology in my head with regard whether I'm a Trump supporter or a Biden supporter? What am I thinking when I see something like this?
A voter's going to have to, assuming these are the two candidates.
We'll talk about that later.
But a voter's going to have to think about, well, do I vote for the older individual here who has some cognitive issues, but okay, maybe he'll be able to do a pretty good job, but he's got those issues. Can I get past that? That's something that voters are going to have to think about now. And they shouldn't be thinking about that. Biden should have been stepping up and looking good like he did in the State of the Union, but he failed. There's results now that are coming in.
All right, let's talk about the politics of this. You mentioned a moment ago while you were chatting with me that you don't, you know, if this is the final ticket going into the presidential election, are you saying on the Republican side, the Democratic side, both sides? What do you mean by that?
I actually think both sides have
Really?
issues.
But will these two be the candidates at the end?
Well, I don't think, but I think that the pressure will mount for Biden to step aside, and he could do it gracefully by simply saying that he wants to take age off of the table for the Democratic Party and throw it back to the Republicans, because Donald Trump, even though he looked sharper, he doesn't really communicate well in debates or anything in terms of his presentation now, because it's one fabrication after the other.
All right, we should mention that we tape a bit earlier in the week, so it's a fast-moving story. Things could change by the time you see it this weekend. But now, you know what the time is now. Time for one of our regular segments, a commentary from Dr. Bart Rossi. We call the Rossi Rant.
And Frank, today I'd like to really talk about change. I'd like to go off on change because, you know, if people are saying that there are cognitive issues, that Biden is presenting with cognitive problems, and they want change. Actually, they would probably want change on both sides of the aisle here. But if people are saying that, then what is the Democratic Party there for? I mean, we have a Democratic Party. They should be making decisions based on the candidate. The candidate is faltering, has issues, there's cognitive concerns. So people always talk about that they want change. Well, the Democratic Party ought to listen to all of those folks out there who are clamoring for change. They want somebody else, more dynamic, somebody who can present all of the issues the way the Democrats want to present them, on abortion, on climate, on mental health, on health care. They want that. Well, let's give them the candidate. The Democrats aren't thinking that way. And the Republican side has their own issues with Trump and his fabrications. But I think it's time for change and Joe Biden to make a decision to leave the race.
All right. Thank you, Doctor. Coming up, the Republican National Convention kicks off Monday, but one high-profile Republican, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, will not be in the spotlight. Why? That's next on Power and Politics. Welcome back to Power and Politics. I'm Frank Cipolla, joined by political psychologist Dr. Bart Rossi. The Republican National Convention is set to begin Monday, but Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, the man who was once called the future of the party, will be conspicuously absent from the primetime stage or any related high-profile event. So is this a snub? Was it deliberate? Or is it a scheduling quirk? Your thoughts?
Frank, definitely not a quirk, okay? This is authoritarianism on steroids, in my view, okay? I mean, Donald Trump, the former president, wants to be in total control. I am sure he doesn't want Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis or anybody out there getting any attention. He is in control. It's his convention. It's his time. He believes that. And that's what this is all about. It's about projection. He's going to be the authoritarian person, the boss, as we've always said here on the show. And he is setting that up for the convention to be just like that.
Interesting. Okay, also making news this week, a group that sued Governor DeSantis over those flights which sent migrants to Martha's Vineyard is now going to attempt to sue in federal court, saying the DeSantis administration misled migrants as part of what they call a publicity stunt. Your thoughts on that?
You know, it just seems to me that what we had said before is very true today. And that is that this was a political stunt. It's a way of just kind of shoring up the right wing for the governor.
And he was running for president at that time,
He was running
too.
for president. That's right. And so I think it's just unfortunate that this happened. It seemed like a political stunt then and now the same.
And you know, the migrant issue has really not been solved on the border.
No.
I think most would agree with that. And certainly in Florida, I know he sent some state officials to the Florida coast to make sure that Haitians didn't end up there illegally, and some of the migrants as well. You're saying that's his bona fides. He's
trying to present himself as being tough on immigration and immigrants. By the way, a recent projections over the next 5 or 6 years, immigrants coming into this country will account for over $4 trillion of gross national product. So immigrants coming in are important to us. We certainly want the right people to come in. That's an issue. But being totally negative and obstinate is a problem.
You know, the Republican Party, when we were young men, was always for business.
Yeah.
strong business, capitalism, and so on. You're absolutely right. These migrants come in, they do a lot of jobs that the average American would not want to do, and they add to the economy.
People in Arizona and Texas used to pay them to come over the border to help them with the crops and everything else. And now the view is that they're really not welcome here. But they should be welcome. They should be vetted.
Yes.
Of course.
Agreed.
But it's a remaining issue that needs both sides needs to take a look at this.
Okay, another hot button issue also making news. The state, apparently in this state, 2 authors of textbooks that are used in Florida schools have been told by the state to eliminate some references to climate change before those books can be used in the classroom, and to add citations to back up statements claiming human activity causes climate change. This is a subject we've touched on before.
Right.
Now they're reaching into the powers that be, into those people, according to these textbook authors,
right.
With regard to climate change, what it means, how it's to be presented to school kids.
Right. And most people in Florida and across the country believe climate change is here. A lot of people could feel it. It's just that it's happening. And scientists, of course, have written thousands and thousands of articles as to why we have climate change. To deny the science, to me, is really absurd, okay? But there's a small number, let's say a base of people, that this appeals to. You can be anti-climate and appeal to those, let's say 20 or 30% of the people who really don't want to believe in climate change. They just don't want to hear about it. So politically, you're really pitching again to that base of people, and hopefully you'll get by with the rest of us. Most of the people believe it, by the way.
You know, this is an interesting thing we bring up again and again. Some politicians, not all of them, but some politicians appeal to that minority of voters.
Right.
At the expense of the majority of the voters, and think that's a winning strategy. Is it because the minority votes consistently, religiously, and the other portion does not vote as much?
The thinking, Frank, is the psychology here is if I can get 20 or 30% of the vote, then I only have to get another 20, 21%. Maybe I'll get some of those people who really do believe in climate change and all of that, and that'll be good. But if you get 20 or 30%, then you're really almost at that 50% level.
Interesting strategy. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we see who enjoyed the warm sunshine this week and who got caught in the rain with the always popular segment, Sunshine or Showers, when Power and Politics continues. Welcome back to Power and Politics. We have seen a lot of rain so far this summer in Florida, and for some politicians and others, they have been rained on as well. Some, however, have danced between the raindrops, so with that as a backdrop, it's time now to see who is up and who is down this week in a segment we call Sunshine or Showers. So we start with the sunshine. Doctor, who is in the sunshine for you?
Well, Frank, I have someone who really deserves a lot of sunshine this week, and that's Anna Mae Proteskis. I think that's how she pronounces her last name, and her sister, who befriended a special needs adult in Israel a number of years ago. And they became friends over time. I guess they communicated via email and text, by the computer. And she's a nonverbal adult again. And as a result of the Hamas attack, she really needed assistance. So Anna Mae and her sister decided to fly her here to the United States and take her in. So I think that is one of the greatest personal stories to come out of this terrible war, where they've actually taken her in and they're gonna have her live with them.
Well, Anna Mae, and I'm not gonna take a shot at her last name.
And I think she,
Anna Mae is in
I think she works at the Good Samaritan Medical Center in West Palm Beach, and they had a very nice ceremony for her as well.
Very good.
Yeah,
all right.
Sunshine. And now I've got to throw it to you for some sunshine. Give us some sunshine.
You know, we've talked about President Biden. He's had a rough week or so. I mean, it's been bad, but I'm going to give him props. I think he's in the sunshine for his performance during the NATO summit this week. He gave a very forceful speech. He seemed like he was on top of everything. He's also handling a lot of the NATO issues. There are 32 countries now as part of NATO, and also saying during that speech that there's more aid coming to Ukraine, which is much needed in its fight against Russia. So I'm going to put President Biden, despite his rough and bumpy weeks over the last couple of weeks, he's in the sunshine. Okay, now, as you know, with every sunshiny day, we talk about this all the time, there are some showers. So who is in the shower?
Well, Frank, the person in the showers this week for me is someone that I just really can't get my arms around this at all. And I'm talking about Clarence Thomas, who in an 8-1 decision, it was his decision that a particular individual who brought the case to the Supreme Court on guns and being able to buy guns, this particular individual who brought the case used his weapon apparently 4 or 5 times inappropriately, shot his weapon, and had a restraining order against him, threatened his ex, and Clarence Thomas believed, only him, that this individual still should have the right to buy guns. Now, it was an 8-1 decision, and I'm thinking to myself as a psychologist, this has nothing to do with the Second Amendment. This is someone who must have a very extreme view of guns and the ability to buy weapons for whatever reason, but it doesn't really make much sense. So I think Clarence Thomas really deserves to be in the showers for extremism on steroids, if you will, because none of the other judges even contemplated this at all.
So he is in the showers.
Yes.
Now?
I'm waiting for you now to.
You have to ask me.
I've got
I've
to give you an opportunity for the showers.
Well, you know what? We've done some stuff here where I think a couple of weeks ago we put the flamingo in the sunshine. I'm going to go out of state. I don't think we've done this yet. I'm going out of state. North Carolina Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, who's running for governor of North Carolina, so I'm going out of state, said the other day at a church with a cross behind him, the congregants in their seats,
Right.
that some folks, in his word, need killing. Now, one of the commandments is thou shalt not kill, and there was not even an utterance from anybody there, nor the pastor, nor any Republican saying a lieutenant governor running for governor of a state of North Carolina should say people need killing. And it's just appalling to me. So Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson of North Carolina, you are in the shadows this week.
Well deserved. And
Showers.
again, extremism. I mean, such extremism today is just really hard to take.
All right, Doctor. Time for a break now. When we come back, a commentary by yours truly titled, Let's Be Frank, When Power and Politics Continues. Welcome back. Earlier this month, we celebrated the 248th anniversary of the United States. 248 years ago, the Founding Fathers created this continent's first representative democracy. It was quite a feat. Blood was shed in a nasty Revolutionary War, which ended with the final repudiation of King George. We were free of England, no more kings. We, the people, as Thomas Jefferson wrote, would decide our future. Sadly, here we are all those years later, and in an instant, the U.S. Supreme Court has created a modern-day monarchy for any man or woman who would be president. Now, if this statement sounds hyperbolic, it's not. 6 Supreme Court justices, without any lower court legal support or suggestion, decided on their own that no one is above the law except the President of the United States acting in his or her quote-unquote official duties. Something no one expected, and just to be clear, this is not about this new power being granted to President Biden or should he win former President Trump. This is about any future occupant of the White House executing his or her charge without restraint. This gray area the High Court has carved out can now be stretched to the liking of any future president who may decide that someone needs to be prosecuted, harassed by the federal government, or, in an albeit worst-case scenario, assassinated. Again, not an exaggeration. All of that is now possible. And if the president was so inclined to execute an opponent, it would take years to sort it out in court, all while his or her opponent is no longer around. Who are these unelected men and women deciding the future for the rest of us? These Supreme Court justices deciding the fate of 350 million Americans. Who in the world believes giving one man or woman this immense power is a good idea? Like any branch of government, the judiciary has a check as well. It's the U.S. Congress. The Congress could tomorrow pass a law that would wipe out this ruling and state once again that no one is above the law. But good luck with that. Congress can't even decide on the nation's annual budget. So here we are at this precipice. Revolutionary War hero Patrick Henry said, any future president who considers himself above the law could easily lead to an American throne. Patrick Henry's warning has never been more chilling. We'll be right back. That's it for this week's edition of Power and Politics. On behalf of my co-host, political psychologist Dr. Bart Rossi, and the fine folks working behind the scenes, thanks for joining us. As always, we'd like to know what you think. Visit us at powerandpolitics.tv or email us at info@powerandpolitics.tv. We'll see you again a week from now at this time and on this same station. Have a great week.